This is No One Left Behind, written by CosmicAce, read by Star1412. Chapter 10. Garbage at the Door. Summary. As a lot of you seem excited about, the flaming dumpster shows up. Also cuteness, but not related to the trash can on fire. Inko woke up to what was becoming her new normal. He saw she pulled her from sleep with a kiss to her forehead, then left for work. He was taking on more hours to make sure they had enough income. Inko wished he could stay home, but knew that it wasn't logical. They had gone from 1 kid to 2, and then jumped to 6. Money wasn't a massive problem, not with both of them working and her being a lawyer. They did need to start thinking of moving, though. Having a cushion of money would definitely help with that. Once she actually got out of bed, Inko dressed and went to see which kids were awake. Usually the answer was none, but sometimes Toya or Fuyumi were already up. Those were the days she taught them how to cook things, making sure to keep their shaking hands away from fire, and nightmare-shadowed eyes focused on something else. If the twins weren't awake and she still had time, Inko made breakfast. Izuku and Hitoshi had school most of the week, and goodness knows how easy getting 2 5-year-olds out the door was. It was nothing short of trying to get a cat to willingly go out in the rain. The 4 Todoroki children couldn't go yet, not with their father still hunting them. Inko noticed the missing alerts and posters more often now that it actually applied to her. The 4 kids stayed home while Inko ran the other 2 to school. It wasn't long, so she didn't worry. Toya and Fuyumi were already 14 anyway. Natsuo was usually well-behaved, and Choto could be occupied by coloring or with food and TV. They were ridiculously easy compared to how Izuku was as a newborn. Once back at home, Inko juggled paperwork, emails, work calls, and helping the 4 Todorokis with homework. They were mostly on track learning-wise, but if they didn't practice, they could fall behind. Since they couldn't go to school yet, Inko showed them how to use online textbooks and worksheets. It was better than a private tutor, they told her, since this way they didn't have someone always looking over their shoulders. It was stressful, but Inko knew they would all figure it out eventually. Meals were something to get used to, but that was okay. They didn't have a lot of leftovers anymore, if any. Shopping was even more fun for the little ones now. They actually filled a cart with how many people they had to feed. Inko was just thankful Toya and Fuyumi helped corral the kids while she shopped. Today Inko was doing more paperwork. It was necessary for her to wrap up a few of her other cases before the Endeavor one went through. Any day now it would become official, and all of her attention would be focused on it. She already had a lot of evidence against the man. Hisashi called it her pride-murdering binder this time. The 4 Todorokis were quietly working nearby, careful not to get papers mixed up. Shoto had already finished his simple math and was coloring now. Natsuo was getting help from Fuyumi with his history. Inko didn't know what Toya was doing, since he seemed to be just staring out the window. "Toya, sweetie, are you okay?" Inko asked gently, careful not to scare him. He shook himself, turning to look at her. Panic flashed in his eyes for a second, and it only reinforced Inko's desire to utterly destroy the man that dared to call himself their father. I'm fine, Miss Inko. It just thinking. Do you want to talk about it? I think I'd be more interesting to tell than the clouds." Toya cracked a grin. It fell, and he grew somber. "It's just, our old man is a hero. He raised Shoto and me to be heroes. Even if I was thrown out the minute Shoto's quirk came in, I still sort of want to be one. If only to show him I can. Does that make me a bad person?" "Oh, sweetie, that doesn't make you bad. If you know you want to be a hero, then you can be a hero. Parentage doesn't matter. I already know you would make a wonderful one. But I want to prove I'm better than him. A hero shouldn't be a hero because of that." "Do you want to save people?" Inko asked, sharper than normal. It made Toya look up, at least. Yeah, I guess. I don't want anyone to go through this, like us." "Then you can be a great hero. And if you want to prove to your father that you can be a hero without him, then do it. Pass him in the ranks and show everyone who he really is." Inko reached across the table and took Toya's hand. It was rough with old burns. "Whatever you choose to do, we'll be here. Whether you want to be a social worker, a hero, a police officer, or something else, all of us will be behind you, no matter what." Inko remembered when she first found out about Izuku being bullied. She remembered that she never gave him a solid answer to his question. She had an answer now. It had never been a real question to begin with, was it? The answer had been the same from the beginning, even if she hadn't wanted to accept it. Toya smiled shakily, but smiled all the same. Thank you, Miss Cinco. There's no need to thank me, Toya. We're a family now, and family sticks together. The case got assigned a court date within the next few days. Inko was busy compiling the evidence and witnesses and, well, everything. He saw she didn't understand some of it, but that was okay. His very smart wife was the lawyer, not him. Thank goodness. He couldn't argue without almost crying or making a joke. That or cursing out the other lawyer. Honestly, he had no idea how Inko did it. Not that he had ever seen her be an actual lawyer, only heard about it, but from what he had heard, she hadn't lost her intimidating presence. The 4 Todoroki kids were honestly super well behaved. Izuku, Hitoshi, and Shoto were immediate buddies. Hisashi probably had well over 100 pictures of them playing and being adorable already. Natsuo was a good kid too. He just had lots of energy. Hisashi made sure to take him outside to play if they had time. He was actually really good at soccer. Toya and Fumi were quiet. He got to watch as they slowly came out of their shells, laughing and joking with them more as time went on. Toya turned out to be very sarcastic. One of the biggest surprises was that Fumi liked dad jokes. Hisashi stood there, gaping like a fish the first time she said, "Bye, Sashi," as he left the room. In short, Hisashi loved his new kids, and yes, they were his. Screw what the government said, they were his now. All the sad children were going to be adopted whether the law liked it or not. He didn't know how true that statement was going to become for them. It was stressful, though. Inko was throwing herself into the case, gathering evidence and compiling it into separate sections. This one was even worse than Hitoshi's foster parent case. She had to take more breaks when she got to civilian casualties. Saying it was horrific would be putting it extremely mildly. The Todorokis gave Inko whatever she needed, whether that be a glass of water or more questions answered. Hisashi couldn't be more grateful to them. As the date grew closer, the apartment got more tense. Mostly the older kids, since they actually understood what was happening. The 4 would be testifying in court. Shoto and Natsuo didn't quite grasp what it meant, other than it would help punish Endeavor. It was good enough for them either way. Toya and Fuyumi were more nervous about it, but they were resolute in their decision. Hisashi did his best to help out too. He took the week of the case off so that he could be there, if only to be with the Todoroki children while Inko was doing her thing. Izuku and Hitoshi still had school, but it was easy enough to go and get up. He could only wait and do what he could to lessen the burden that was on his family's shoulders. The date was 2 days away, and Inko was putting the finishing touches on the case. All 6 children were watching a movie, and it had become a tradition of sorts for them to do that once Izuku and Hitoshi got back from school. Doing that let Hitoshi and Izuku recharge from school, and for all of them to bond. Inko found it sweet. Hisashi did too, evidently, since he had taken pictures of them doing it almost every day. The movie also meant the apartment was actually quiet. It was something that seemed to be getting less common. Not that Inko was going to complain. A silent house had always been eerie for her. It also meant she could very clearly hear the heavy knock on the door. Inko ignored it for the moment. They weren't expecting anyone to visit, so the door went unanswered. Then the person knocked again, louder this time. Inko continued ignoring them. If they knew Inko, they would have texted, and the police would have called who they were through the door by now. Inko finally got up when it sounded like the door was shaking on its hinges. Her work could apparently wait. The noise attracted the attention of the twins, but Inko waved them off. An angry person likely at the wrong apartment was nothing she couldn't handle. She looked through the peephole first, and promptly recoiled away from the door. Because Endeavor was standing in the hallway. His stupid beard wasn't on fire, only to keep the fire alarms from going off probably, but this was bad. Very, very bad. Endeavor was here, and so were his children. The children that would likely panic if they saw him. Inko wouldn't let him touch them. Not in a million years or beyond. No harm would come to her kids as long as she was alive. Perhaps it was her past self talking, but Inko immediately walked back to the kitchen to retrieve her phone. Calmly, so none of the kids took notice that something was off. She hit record and set the phone in her jean pocket. For once, and only once, she was grateful that her phone stuck out of the pocket. Inko steeled herself, putting on a mask of politeness, and opened the door. Even without his flames up, she felt an instant rush of heat. The tall man glared down at her, though he faltered for a split second, likely not expecting her small size. Inko met his blue eyes unflinchingly. She had faced down men bigger and badder than him. A demon is nothing compared to the devil, especially in the face of an archangel. Endeavor, to what do I owe the pleasure of having such a high-ranking hero show up at my small doorstep? Inko asked sweetly. It was meant to throw the man off, and it seemed to work. Are you Inko Midoriya? He demanded, looming over her. She hardly batted an eye at the display. I am. Do you need something, sir? You will drop your case against me. Inko stared up at him, blinking once. No. Excuse me? Are you perhaps going deaf, Mr. Endeavor? All that fire around your ears must not be healthy. Inko raised her voice like the hero was an especially stupid pet. I said I will not be dropping the case. Have a good day, sir. Inko moved to shut the door, only to find Endeavor's hand holding it open. He was almost asking to be put in jail, wasn't he? I am not asking, woman. Drop your case, or there will be consequences. Are you threatening property damage and assault, Endeavor? Inko asked, tone sickeningly sweet, and loud enough for her phone to pick it up. Only if you do not meet my demands, he growled, forcing the door open. Inko took a small step back. It gave the camera a better angle. I don't know what you think you've found, but I can assure you, you have nothing. My trail is clean. A clean trail doesn't mean clean hands, and from what I've found, yours are stained very red, Endeavor. So it would be beneficial for you to leave my home and not to add to the blood you've amassed, The man had obviously never had his intimidation tactic not work like this before, just judging by the look on his face. Inko had momentarily dropped into what her colleagues nicknamed as her lawyer voice. It worked in unsettling the hero on her doorstep, though. This isn't over, he growled. The great Endeavor turned tail and speed-walked back down the hallway. Inko finally let out the breath she'd been holding. Of all the days and times, it had to be when all the kids were home and when Hisashi wasn't. For all her talk, Inko wasn't the best fighter. She was a lawyer, someone who had worked with information and words, not fists. That being said, if Endeavor had decided to try and actually break in, he would have found his shoes in the air and costume too tight. Small object detection was good for such things. She went back inside, mentally smoothing her ruffled feathers. Hisashi was right, she really was a mother hen. The 6 kids were still watching their movie. Toya looked up for a moment when she walked in. Who was that, Miss Inko? Oh, no one special, she hummed, waving a hand. Reminded me of a dumpster fire, though. The children's laughter was all she needed to hear for a smile to appear on her face once again. The courthouse was unusually busy. Not that Hisashi could tell any difference, since he'd only been in one a few times. Inko was in front of him, dressed in business clothes and eyeliner sharp enough to kill a man. God, he loved his wife. The 4 Todoroki children were by their sides, all dressed to the nines. Court was a very formal setting. That did not, however, stop Hisashi from packing snacks and things for his children. Endeavor wasn't here yet. At least, if he was, then he wasn't in sight. Good. Inko had told him what happened with the man. He was seriously considering asking Inko if they should speed up their plans to move. No way was he letting the flamehead anywhere near his kids, legally adopted or otherwise. They sat in the hall for a while before being let in. Hisashi took Fuyumi, Natsuo, and Shoto to seats, while Toya followed Inko. He would be the one to represent his siblings. Hisashi was so proud of him for doing this. Endeavor came in a few minutes later. He sat at the other table, with his own lawyer, glaring daggers at Inko. He didn't seem to notice Toya yet. Hisashi hoped that could stay true for a while longer. The judge stood up on her podium, hitting her gavel once. We are here for the case against Endeavor, Todoroki Enji, on multiple charges of assault, battery, property damage, and abuse. The charges and evidence will be presented by the accuser's lawyer, Mrs. Midoriya. Counter-evidence can be provided by the defendant's lawyer, Mr. Itachi. There will be no quirk usage in this room from anyone. Failure to comply with that will result in permanent removal from the case. Now, Mrs. Midoriya, your first point. And just like that, it had started. This was Chapter 10 of No One Left Behind, written by CosmicAce and read by Star1412. If you liked this, let me know in the comments, and let CosmicAce know on the original work. If you have any ideas for other fanfics I could read, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for listening!